Hi everyone, Dallas Piana here from Coaching Scaling Secrets. I teach coaches how to build their businesses online using Facebook and email. And today I wanted to do something a little different, kind of more esoteric in a sense, to talk about consciousness. I recently, so a little about me. I come from fabulous women, my grandmother, my mother, all hands on healers, and I became a nurse and then kind of went into coaching. So I'm all about, I'm always seeking and certainly surrounded myself with a ton of women who is bettering themselves, with their connection with their higher power. Okay, that's just like a background thing. And maybe I didn't even have to tell you that. But anyway, I recently, over the holidays, downloaded Michael Beckwith. He is a spiritual leader, has been around for a long, long time. He had something that he was promoting through Mind Valley. Mind Valley is an extraordinary kind of educational platform promoting awareness in all different areas of life. So definitely check it out if that's something you are interested in. Anyway, so I got into his program, self study, moving along, blah, 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 blah. And he introduced, the 4 stages of spiritual growth, which is the same as, consciousness, right? It's your awareness of life. And, this is nothing new. I mean, this has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, but the way he has described it really drew me in. Okay. And I'm going to share it with you. And I gave you, if you were on the email yesterday, you saw a little bit about it. Okay. So I'm going to show you through here. Yeah, you can see this. So there's 4 stages of consciousness that we go through. There's to me. Let me see if I can do this. To me, by me, through me, and as me. So let's talk about to me. To me. Okay. Which is the first level of stages of awareness, consciousness, spiritual growth. So to me would be the victim mentality. They did it to me. And not really taking any responsibility in life for something that happened in your realm or in your situation. Okay. You start to blame. All right. And, we see this, from, a lot of children are at that stage, right? They don't take responsibility. We kind of joked, children, we would say, could you pick up that piece of paper on the floor to a child? And they said, well, I didn't put it there. You know, they're like, I don't want any responsibility for that. Or, something occurs out there in the world and it's the other person's fault. And generally, it instills fear, right? The victim mentality. People are afraid. So there's a lot of fear in that area. Okay. So the second level is by me. Okay. And what they mean by me is through, in this stage of development of your consciousness, is you're starting to manifest. Okay. So, the film The Secret was all about manifestation. Okay. So manifestation can be that you're learning a new skill, right? You're learning a new skill, so you're learning to manifest. All right. So what about, like, if you were baking a cake, you're learning the skill of following a procedure, measuring things out, putting them in a bowl, mixing them all together, turning on the oven, popping it into a pan, putting it in the oven, and you have a product at the end. That's like by me. You are doing, it's by you. You're following something. You're developing a skill. You're gaining control in that stage of consciousness, okay? That you see that if you follow something, you will produce or manifest something. So you see that you are the creator, right? And you are responsible. And you realize that, when you were blaming other people, you were giving away your power. All right. So you have that differentiation. All right. Now, the third stage is through me. And I think this is my favorite one. Through me is that you and you and the universe are kind of like one and the best way for me to kind of describe this is think of someone who is learning to play the violin. Okay, because this is like the perfect example. We once lived in a different area, and there was a neighbor with a child, a boy, and the mother wanted the boy to play the violin because her grandfather played the violin. And the boy struggled with it, and he hated it, and he hated the lessons, and he hated practicing. And every time I talk to her, he says, no, he can't come out to play because he's practicing. He's got to practice, on and on and on and on. And eventually, that child at like age 16, it all of a sudden it went from learning how to play that instrument to feeling how the instrument, and he was creating composition after composition of extraordinary music. So there was a shift where he and the music kind of became one. Another good example of this, of through me, is something working through you, is, I see this with healers or people in service providers, that you're dealing with, people that are suffering or want help with their body or their mind. There's a point in the process where you, as the expert, the authority, are kind of one with the person that you are working with. There's an exchange that, are you the teacher or are you the student, right? Goes back and forth. So it's working through you. You don't have to think, what are the steps I need to take anymore? It's automatic. It's almost like you're at a mastery stage of performing a manifestation. And, there is no ego at that point. Okay, it just is. So it's almost as if you let go of the control because the flow is just moving through you. I almost like talk about it in such a way where you sit, you're on a river and you're in an inner tube and you're sitting in the interview and you're going down the river and you're going with the flow of life, right? You're going with the flow of life, and ever so often you come across a boulder or a rock that traps you, and you got to use your feet to kick off and get back into the flow of life, okay? So the boulders could be that you slip back into the poor me, mentality or consciousness, or the conflict, and how do you get out of that to get back into the flow of life, right? And then the fourth way is as me. And what was Michael talking about at this point was, things happening as me. So the energy is moving through you, but in a different way. And I think, for me, I've only had, very few experiences of being like one with the universe. I can talk about being one with the universe, but actually having that feeling or that connection, was when I was living in New York City. I had gone to a network chiropractor, a completely different kind of chiropractor. And I had, 2 situations of working with this guy where I had out-of-body experiences. That to me is really, kind of one with the universe. Okay, that kind of feeling. Now, what I want to say is regarding the 4 stages, I don't believe that we're stuck in any one situation. I think we move around in the four stages of consciousness, or the 4 stages of spiritual development, in different areas of our life. We may, be in phase 3 in one area of our life, and maybe we're in 2 in the rest of our areas of our lives, right? Or maybe, from time to time we move into the blame area, to me situation. And that's what I kind of wanted to share today, was that, my life has been pretty extraordinary, moving around for the last, I would say 7 years since I got sober. And I have been kind of like sitting back in the flow of life and doing what I love to do, which is really to teach coaches how to build their business online. Love it. And my business is growing. I'm helping other coaches build their business. And I also, on the side, do a lot of service work. I'm in with a spiritual community with women, meeting all the time, just to see how we can better our community. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, one of these gals calls me and pretty much attacks me and my character. And in such a way where she was coming from a place of fear, feeling threatened by me. So, lucky for me, I know how to, say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, blah, blah, blah. But she continued to work, through the phone call with me and kind of make me wrong to a point where I need to get off the phone call. We were going nowhere, right? So I wrapped it up. Fortunately, my husband was in the car, so he heard this conversation. So, was I crazy? I thought I was crazy for a moment, that maybe I am, such a, bad person of where this person said I was. And he said, no, not at all, and that conversation, or that feeling that I had hurt or wounded another person, stuck with me for such a long time, to a point where I vacillated, being, wounded, my own woundedness of feeling that I hurt someone and then that they hurt me. Okay. So I moved immediately into to me, to me. I was stuck in to me for months, thinking, making that other person in my mind. It's amazing what our mind will do to try to protect ourselves, is trying to make the other person wrong. Like they're wrong, And, finally, it's been like a year of this kind of haunting in the back of my mind. And it's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about that conversation. Like, how can I improve? How can I be more sensitive? That sort of thing. Like almost squashing who I am down, making me someone who I'm not to accommodate somebody else. And, so I have been, asking the universe for help and directions, because I'm not moving forward. I'm not moving out of the phase number one. And I want to move into, phase number 2 or 3 in this area of interpersonal relationships with people in my community. And it's just one person, but it is, I'm in bondage with her in my mind. Okay. And I want to break that free. It's time to break it free. So all of a sudden I get this aha moment, that suddenly, comes into my consciousness, that 10 years ago when I started internet marketing, one of my coaches and mentors at the time says, there will be times in your life, in your business career and in your personal life, where there will be people that we will call them haters. And I'm like, huh? Haters? I couldn't imagine that. I just couldn't imagine that people would be like that. So I decided go online and re-educate myself what that really means. So I spent some time going through the internet, going through Google, finding out, reading articles, blogs about the hater in business and personal life. And sure enough, there it was for me, kind of black and white, that here are these people that are so insecure with themselves and so full of fear that they are afraid of moving forward in the universe, moving forward in their life. And anyone that is out there with confidence and moving forward, they want to bring you down into their level, because that makes them bigger. So just by reading that, I can't tell you that the chain that I had with this gal has been broken. Okay. Just broken in such a way where I now have compassion to where she is at, that she is full of fear, insecure in her own right. And that was her kind of automatic reaction in life, to lash out at me. And I got it. Should I take it personally? Probably not, right? Probably not. And I guess the moral of the story is, what I'm trying to tell you guys, is that there are going to be people that try to pull you down on your journey to reach your goal, or to your journey of just experiencing your life and sharing your program and your services with other people. There will be people in your life that, are trying to make you wrong and stay small, because they're afraid of the change of who you're being. And that means that they may have to change, or they're living in a state of fear. Okay. Now, it could be a husband, it could be a spouse, your sister, your mother, and it could be clients, or colleagues in that sense, or people in your community. I've heard about, when people want to step out on their own in entrepreneurial land, that the spouse is not as supportive and to keep going, right? Fortunately for me, Mark, my husband, is so supportive in this area. So it was hard for me 10 years ago when I heard about the haters to actually grasp the concept of what that actually felt like. Well, I'm here to share with you that I actually got zinged by it, and it actually had me almost paralyzed in a way in a particular area in my life where it was really haunting me in my thoughts. And it was time that I finally, said enough is enough, and, asked for help, and actually was guided by, a thought of, this is how you can break the chain. Okay, this is how you can forgive what happened, forgive her for what happened, break the chain, know that she is, wounded herself, and that's why she latched out at you. Is it true? Who knows? But I do know that hurt people hurt people. Okay, people that have been hurt lash out at other people. And you know I need to release it, right? Release these haters or hater from our lives so that you can move forward and become the beautiful flower that you are and blossom who you are. So, just know that there are people out there. Obviously, if you're stuck in the mud like I was for a while and you want to talk about it, private message me. Be happy to get on a conversation with you to help you kind of release the lock, the bondage in your mind that you're having with another person. Because basically, the bondage that I felt, or the chain that I felt to this gal after that situation, was tight, very tight, and I couldn't release it. Okay. And I feel like it affected my productivity just, for the last year. And just by working it through, I feel so much lighter and have moved from, getting out of the victim mentality and moving into, phase number 2 or number 3 when it comes to interpersonal relationships or relationships with my community, that in that way. So, the stages of consciousness, I believe we are constantly moving through them in all different areas of our lives, that we're not just pigeonholed in one phase. But I felt that this was such a great aha moment for me to say, it's time to let this go. Being a victim in this area, get rid of it. What can you do to snap out of it? So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Again, if you are stuck yourself in phase 1 and you want to talk about it, just DM me and we'll hop on a call, and I'd be happy to work it through with you. Okay, that's all I have for tonight. I have no call to action, nothing to sell. Just wanted to share an experience with you that was more, emotional. And the emotions in life that can kind of stop us and paralyze us and have us think, who am I being? How am I being in the world? And which are very important, right? And I will see you next week. So bye.